Welcome to the Pigskin Party Podcast, the only podcast that combines real NFL analysis with a splash of pop culture and a dash of the random. Let's get this Pigskin Party started with your hosts, Brian McFadden and Will Southard.
Welcome back to the PPP. It's time for the flavor of the week. My name is Brian. Please make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening or watching this. And don't forget to tell a friend, because that is how we grow this Pigskin Party. Back again from the main NFL episode. Joining me, as always, still rocking the sleeveless shirt. And also, I notice, yet again, without a hat on his head for the flavor of the week, Will Southern. What's up, man?
What's up, buddy? How you doing?
Are you just giving up on the hat thing? Or you did it?
I'm not, man. I just haven't. I haven't had time to get a hat. It takes a lot of time to click on a thing on Amazon.
Amazon, silly hat, $7. Do it for the show.
I'll let you pick out my hats. I just need you to pick out. It gets hot. I'll be all right. I'll bring back the hats one day.
Yeah, you got the air
conditioner. When you least expect it.
That was a good excuse when you didn't have AC, but you got AC now, so.
You got too used to the hats.
I got too used to the hats?
You got too used to the hats.
Okay.
Wean you off the hats for a little bit.
Okay, fair enough. Now I'm suffering withdrawal from the hats. I need my hat fix. Make sure to fix that next week. Coming back as guests, joining us again off the main NFL episode, we have Rich Maletto, co-host of the ATB Fantasy Show. Rich, how you feeling? You ready to keep going here?
I am ready to keep going, and I'm jealous of the sleeveless shorts, and flip-flops or sandals. That is my go-to. Unfortunately, I was golfing in 52-degree weather with a coat on and was wishing I still had a sweatshirt. So I'm jealous of Willie, straight up.
It's just Will. But you can call him Willie if you want.
Well, that's what you get for putting your name is Willie. It does. He's labeled as Willie in our recording studio here. So
sorry, Will.
Now, Rich,
all
there's
good.
a really
all
easy
good,
solution.
Richie. All good.
Hey, that's what people call me, man. So that's and my dad's name is Rich. So around family, it's Rich and Richie. So have at it.
Fair
man.
enough.
We got Willie and Richie. You know, Rich, there is an easy solution to get your sleeveless shirt look. It's the uniform of Florida. Just move to Florida. Literally, they'll have a whole wardrobe waiting for you. Well, there you go. You talk to Will. He can hook you up. Also joining us back from the main NFL episode, Tom Doherty, co-host of the Friday Night Beers podcast. Tom, how you feeling, man? You ready to keep going with this?
I feel great. I'm definitely ready to keep going. I wish I was having a beer right now, but, on the note of sleeveless shirts, I recently cut my team's softball uniform into a sleeveless tee, and it was not warm when I played most recently. So, Willie, whatever you want to call yourself these days, I'm feeling your energy here in Chicago.
Now, Tom, are you doing that by yourself, or did you inspire the entire team to go sleeveless? Because then that's real solidarity right there.
It takes courage to be brave and to lead, so I am the first one, but I think next Sunday when we get together, there's going to be a few more people. People were digging the look on the other team specifically,
nice.
And we won.
So you're leading by example. You're hoping to inspire. It resulted in a victory. Soon enough, everybody's going to be rocking the Tom sleeveless look in Chicago. Good luck to you there. All right, so...
Well, are they cut sleeves or are they design sleeves? I need to see. Is that a cut sleeve or a design sleeve? Because, Tom automatically gets bonus points because he cut them.
No, these are not cut. This is made.
See, all mine are cut, man. It's not the same.
No, they used to be there, but he hulks out, and he just gets these, and it just rips the sleeves right off cleanly.
That's what it is.
All right, so for those who have listened and for those who have not, when we do the Flavor of the Week episode, we never take you directly from all of that big, chunky NFL discussion right into more big, chunky NFL off-tangent or tangential discussion, as Will likes to say. No, we are going to cleanse your palate. So what we typically do, and we didn't do this last week, we kept it all football, but we're not going to do that this week. But we're also not going to do what we typically do, which is talk about some sort of pop culture, a movie, show, music, you name it. No, what we're going to do here is we're going to break it up a little bit. So when I was booking Rich for this show, he said, here's a story that I have, and he laid out the story for me, and he's like, do you think that would fly on your podcast? I'm like, I don't know if it'll fly, but it is fascinating, so we want to hear about it. So our palate cleanser is weird. I'm not even going to say what it is, because I just want it to come out from you, Rich. So Rich has a story. That's our palate cleanser. Rich, floor is yours.
Can I ask one question to Tom first, since he's in the beers, and I know they don't like to talk snobby beers, but I am a beer snob. are there any sours you're into, Tom? People think I'm nuts, so I like to talk to beer guys, because when I talk about sour beer, everyone's like, what?
No, I actually am into sours because of this show. My co-host specifically is like team sour. We just tried a great one called Midnight Bramble, if you've ever heard of that. It's real good. But no, there's a lot of good beers out there of all flavors, for sure.
Absolutely. I was just curious, because some people are, what's a sour beer? Trust me, it's not for everybody, but man, the good ones, you kind of crave them.
I really, really want a beer right now. You guys, I just keep hearing you guys talk about it. I don't care if it's sour or not. I'd love a beer to hear Rich's amazing story. Go.
All right. So I tell people that I've been recruited for Al Qaeda, and there's some very valid truth to that. So this story goes back to when I was in college. I was a junior and senior in college is all this kind of unfolded. So I'm at college at this small town. I guess it probably doesn't matter. I went to St. Olaf College in Northfield, Minnesota. It's straight south of Minneapolis, St. Paul. You take 35 south, you go to exit 69, you hang a left, and you drive till you'll see the sign that says Cows, Colleges, and Contentment. All right, a couple of Carleton colleges there, a couple of small colleges. There was an individual there that used to work at the video store. Everybody in town, everybody at the schools knew his name was Saeed. You couldn't go into the video store without this guy talking to you. He creeps some people out, other people, whatever. I have this, gift. Random people talk to me. When I go on trips, I average like 0.7 weirdos a day. Like, I've done the math. I've added up how long I've traveled someplace, how many people being introduced to somebody's imaginary friend is weird, right? Like, that's not normal. So, whatever.
There's a bonus point for analytics there. Continue.
So, I meet some weirdos. So, I don't think twice when people talk to me, and I'll talk to anybody. I'll talk to a wall, whatever. I don't care. Well, it turns out I end up moving into these apartment complexes just off of campus, and he's in my building. And these apartment complexes had some students in them, so people were pretty familiar with Saeed. He was always outside sitting on the picnic table with his little Walkman and headphones, smoking cigarettes all the time. Hey, how you doing? What's going on? Whatever. So I come back from class one day. Actually, I was done with class, and I just finished filling out the FAFSA or whatever, was working on some student financial aid, right? Like everybody. I couldn't get a straight answer. Like, I had financial aid, they weren't paying people. I went up into the front office or whatever, and it was a disaster. If you've ever had to deal with it, I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about. They got 15 people to do the work of 2 people, and they can't communicate to each other. It's mind-blowing. So I come back, and I'm just pitching a fit because the school's saying that I qualify because my parents have to, be under them till I'm 25 and all this stuff. So I'm just pitching a fit. Screw the government, F the government, blah, blah, blah. So Saeed stops me, oh, what's going on, pal, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I know what you're talking about. I've had all sorts of issues too. And he proceeds to tell me about his girlfriend who lives in Afghanistan. Now, mind you, this is 99, 2000, 2001. It was 2000, 2001. Okay, so this is pre-9/11, all right? We're in Iraq. We've got the war going on in Iraq. And we know all about Al-Qaeda at this time, but we don't, I guess we don't really know about Al-Qaeda this time. We got the war going on in Iraq. Nothing about Afghanistan has ever come up into play, right? And this guy's telling me about his girlfriend in Afghanistan. He's working with the U.S. to try to get her here. It's a very convoluted story. Whatever. Guy's trying to get his girlfriend back here from Afghanistan. Well, we're always bitching about the government. Every day I come back, we're talking, and one day he's painting an American flag on the bottom of his car. And I'm like, man, what's that about? He's like, got to keep him thinking. I'm like, this guy hand-painted an American flag on the bottom of his little, it wasn't a Subaru Outback, but it was a station wagon kind of like that. I'm like, whatever. So we're talking one day, and he said, man, you ought to listen to this song. So he gives me the headphones from the Walkman, and I have no idea what they're saying, okay? No idea. So I hand it back to him, like, well, what is that? Oh, blah, 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 kill the infidels, blah, 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 kill the infidels, whatever. I'm like, whoa here, dude. I'm like, yeah, I'm not really into that, man. And then I'm like, aren't I kind of an infidel? Like, no, you're good. You don't like the government, blah, 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 blah. Okay, no big deal. Now, I'm having more conversations with this guy than most anybody else is. I'll sit down at the picnic table, so people will be like, man, what's he like, blah, 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 whatever. Well, I kind of befriend this guy. Well, one day he invites me into his apartment. This is like earth-shattering stuff to folks. So I go into his apartment, and I kid you not, this apartment was set up like a bomb shelter. There was an ashtray in it, and I know you guys probably can't see the side. I mean, we're talking hula hoop almost size ashtray.
This is on YouTube. People can see you, or will be able to see you. Yeah.
I mean, we are talking huge ashtray. Like, you could have been throwing cigarettes. I mean, this guy smoked like a chimney, don't get me wrong. But you could have, if I had been holed up in my house for a month, I couldn't have filled that ashtray. Okay? I mean, this was enormous.
For those that are just listening, Rich is like a big O, like the Ohio O. Right, there you go.
Yes, very
State
much
fan.
like the Ohio O and the Ohio State. Good description, Brian. Excellent.
Way to bring the football into it, Brian.
Right? No TV in this joint. No TV, okay? Non-perishable goods, dried food items bursting from the cabinets. I mean, cabinet doors do not shut because boxes and cans are bursting through them, all right? And it's just a single one-bedroom apartment. And I peek around the corner
Side note,
of the
that's
bedroom.
probably a pretty good apartment to hold out during a pandemic.
Agreed. Who
Continue.
knew about that? He was prepared for the pandemic 20 years ago.
20 years ahead of time, yeah.
Right. So I look, and now mind you, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, everybody kind of had a computer in college or close to it or one at home, right? But, the monitors were kind of bulky. You didn't have a huge monitor screen like you do now, right? I mean, if you had a 24-inch monitor screen, that was like unheard of. How wealthy are you type of thing, right? This dude had the most pimped out computer that I'd ever seen in my life at this point. The tower was as big as the towers you see today with the nice gaming computers. Back then that they weren't that big. They were much smaller, little compact units, right? Not like the little cells you get today, but you know what I'm saying. And huge monitor. I mean, the monitor was almost the size of my TV. I had a 32-inch tube TV. Wasn't quite that big, but I mean, the depth on this thing was massive. I'm like, God, no TV, and this guy's got like the creme de creme of the computer world. Like, what the hell? I'm just like, whatever. So, I'm meeting my buddies later. They're like, dude, Saeed invited you into his apartment? I'm like, yeah. They're like, dude, nobody's been in there. What's it like? I'm like, I don't know, man. It looks like a bomb shelter. Like, I don't know another way to describe it. The dude looks like he's ready to just hole up there. It's just a bomb shelter. I don't know. He's a weird dude, but whatever. They're like, I can't believe he invited you in. Whatever. Well, one day, he's sitting there talking to me, and he needs some addresses. Okay? So, I give him some addresses. A couple of guys I knew, the girl I was dating who was in an apartment next door and all that. And now, mind you, I'd already been, it's a side note, but I'd already been kicked out of college for something totally different and was now back. Living in my girlfriend's apartment, same complex, but I'd moved out, moved back in, and Saeed is still there, still talking to me by name, still giving me this whole deal. So I give him a couple addresses, and I don't think anything about it. Meanwhile, we're starting to talk about pilot license. And I took just a course in high school to get my the paper pilot license part. Like, you got to do all the trials and do the test, but the point of the high school course was you be able to take the written exam and potentially pass it, right? So he's telling me about how he's taking these pilot lessons and how he's going to eventually be flying a jet. And I'm like, well, hold on, dude, you got to step your way up. Like, first you're on the Cessna that they're training on, and, you're going to have to go from a prop, and it's a whole different certification to jet. And he's like, no, it'd be about the same. I got this big simulator and all this. I'm like, there's a lot more to it than that. Again, I'm not... There's some red flags showing at this point, but nothing...
You're not connecting the dots yet, yeah.
Right. I'm nowhere near connecting the dots, okay? So I don't think much about it. Meanwhile, my girlfriend gets this letter in the mail, and she hands it to me. She goes, I don't know what this is. And it's written in Arabic with this white powder.
So my dumb ass tastes it. Yeah, it's not Coke. I don't know what it is. Now, mind you, again, nobody's scared about anthrax at this point. We don't have all these weird anthrax scares. Nobody's thinking twice. So I call my buddy
up. We knew what
up.
anthrax was at that point.
Right. So I call my buddy up. He comes on over. Weird. Well, it's not Coke. Yeah, that's what I said. I don't know what it is. So I dump it down in the trash and I save this letter, right? So I go to Saeed. And I'm like, dude, what does this say? I can't tell you. He's getting all weird. I'm like, what is his deal? Like, dude, you're the only one I know what this... I have no idea what it is. And he's like... And so he paraphrases it. Haha, you've been tricked. You've now been poisoned. You're going to die. Blah, blah, blah. And then, oh, just kidding. Just to show you how easy it is. Blah. And he's like, it's just kidding. It was just nothing. Don't worry about it. And I'm like... Now, mind you, the light hasn't switched that 2 weeks or 3 weeks prior... I had given him some addresses, right? Things are starting to add up, but I'm not. I'm still not getting things put together, right?
You're still in the dark here, yeah.
I'm still, right. But now at this point, something's not sitting right with me, right? So we're having another conversation, and again, he's kind of, oh, you should come back to my homeland. You can have, 3 wives and, beautiful women, and he's telling me all about this stuff. Yo, come on, buddy, and I'm like, I have a hard time with one girlfriend. I don't think I need any of that, but man, I hope your girlfriend's coming over here, whatever. Then he's telling me the story about planes flying into buildings. Okay, that he's going to be getting on this plane, and I'm not going to see him much more, and that's going to be the end of it. Now, I couldn't piece much together. I do remember, though, as he was telling me the story, that I remember, because at this time, because I'd been kicked out of school and trying to get kind of my life back together, I started going to church again. And, I was going to even weekly mass at time and just trying to clear my head and, get going in the right direction. And I remember going to church and at night praying about, man, I hope nothing happens. I don't want innocent people to die. Something isn't right about this. So finally one morning I get up and I've got the stats assignment. So we head up to the stats lab. It's in this big computer lab, right? So we do our stats stuff, and while I'm helping this group out doing their stats stuff, I decide maybe I should contact the FBI. So I get on the internet and I go to FBI.gov and I start trying to find phone numbers and all that stuff. And so I go find a phone in the computer lab because I don't really want it coming back to me. Something doesn't seem right, but I don't really know what's all going on here, right? So I pick up the phone and I call the FBI. And I'm like, look, here's this guy. He's talking about he and other people are going to hijack a plane or planes and fly them into buildings. Something is really not right with this guy. There's been letters. I've been in his apartment. Something is
what
really
is the time?
off.
What is the time and the year? When you actually called the FBI? Where are we at this point?
So this would have been the summer of 2001 because I was in summer school back into college. Okay, so this would have been somewhere
before 9/11, basically.
Yes, this would have been somewhere between June and August. I couldn't tell you exactly when. Okay. So sometime, because that's when summer school had run. So I call them up and I'm like, look, you need to check this guy out. They're like, well, what buildings? I'm like, I don't know what buildings. Well, when? I don't know exactly when. Well, you need to tell us when and what buildings. I'm like, hold up. I can tell you his place of business. I can give you his address. I don't even have his last name, but I can give you his first name. Can't you just send somebody to check? I mean, just come do a wellness check in his apartment. I'm telling you, you're going to see something is wrong here. Well, if you can gather more information for us, we'll be more than happy to look into it. So my bright ass thinks, well, maybe I can find something out. So I'm trying to talk to him. Well, he's getting spooked, and I can tell. And so I just kind of stepped away, and I call my one buddy up and I explain what I did and whatnot. And he's like, bro, it's not your job to do the FBI's job. I get that you think something's off. I get that you sense something is off, but he goes, that's all you have? He goes, it's not your place. He goes, what? he goes, what are you going to find out and when and what's it going to take? He goes, you did your part, man. Just take note and step away. So I did. Well, fast forward, I'm in class. I come back from class. I had an early 8 a.m. class. I come back from class, and the girlfriend's leaving going, oh my God, a plane just flew into one of the World Trade Center towers. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? So I go upstairs in the apartment, I turn it on, and I'm watching, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And as I'm watching, the second one flies into the tower. And I'm like, I can't believe what I'm seeing. Now, all of a sudden, dots are connecting big time, right? So I go outside, and guess who's not outside? Saeed. Man's outside all the time.
Table. Yeah.
This is Minnesota winter. The dude's outside at the picnic table smoking cigarettes. He ain't out there. So for 3 days, nobody had seen him. So people are asking me about him. I don't know. Well, around the third or fourth day, my buddy lived in the same hallway, about 4 doors down, 3 doors down. Heard a knock, and he had seen all the cops around. So there had been a couple of marked, unmarked cars, and so there was a couple unmarked cops, and cops showed up at his door. Knocked on his door, and he said, yeah, I know why you're here. Yeah, I'm coming. We saw him hauled away. No one ever saw or heard of his ass again. I have scoured the internet looking for his photo, looking for names. Shortly after that happened and 9/11 happened, there was news on the Minneapolis news stations about a cell that was supposed to come out of Minneapolis. They had backtracked training flights back to 2 different airports. One of them was one not far from Northfield, where I believe this guy was training. And I'll be honest, Brian, the part that bothers me about it was that I couldn't put together the red flags fast enough. Because it still bothers me today.
Our world changed on 9/11 with regards to, there was terrorism earlier. Obviously, you got the Atlanta bombings in 96. But
the Trade Center back in 93 or whatever it was.
Right, but those were not on the scale of 9/11, where it changed our fundamental observations around the war on terror and how it could be so close to us. Don't kick yourself too much, I guess. There were a lot of red flags, to be fair. But I don't know. That's like, you're just out of college. You're not that. That's not really your, like your buddy said, that's not your job to put all that together.
Well, and like I said, those red flags then were almost weird. I mean, nowadays they look so apparently obvious, right? I mean, really glaringly obvious.
In retrospect, right? Well, yeah, all of us listening to it who have 9/11 was 20 years ago. We've been raised around this. We've grown up around this idea, and so yeah, to us now it's super obvious. But at the time, I can imagine how it wouldn't have been. He was just some dude who liked to hang out on the picnic table and smoke cigarettes and have giant ashtrays in his house. So,
right. I mean, what part do you think he played in that, though? I mean,
well, I think he was a part, because there was 3 or 4 in each of the flights. I think he was, what I had read afterwards was they didn't think that they would ever stop travel in the flights. So they had, throughout the whole day, there were waves from different airports. And Minneapolis did admit that there was a wave by them stopping travel that did not leave that flight. I imagine he was probably on a flight, who knows, one of those big flights. And I'm trying to remember the targets they had around that area. For all I know, Chicago would have had a target, one of the buildings there. Who knows? You
think he was on a plane and they just weren't able to execute?
I think he was going to be heading to the airport that day, and I think when travel got stopped, he holed it up, and he was told to basically hold down the fort and don't you say or do anything, is my guess.
Wow. Well, that is the most sobering, somber palate cleanser we've ever had by far. I'm certainly cleansed because football is off my mind, but I don't know if I want to be in this scenario.
All right. Well, I apologize. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I've heard some bad, Greek life recruitment stories, but that's got nothing compared to what you experienced as a college student. And
I saw a sorority wrestle in a kitty tub full of chocolate pudding at UF.
Well, that sounds.
Sign me up for that. Yeah. Sign me up for that, man.
But a full-on, legitimate Al-Qaeda recruitment who could have been part of 9/11. If Rich was in a worse spot in his life, who knows? People are vulnerable. That's why they go after them,
Well, that's a good point, Brian. I mean, if you think about it, if he was told to target somebody, me coming back, pitching a fit, worrying about school, thinking I'm kicked, all this other stuff, was I not a prime target? I didn't even think about
exactly that. That's why he's, you're disgruntled. You have a specific reason to be angry at establishment, certainly at your government at the time. Yeah. And their job was to recruit, right? Their job was they wanted to. This whole thing they planned was easier the more people they got involved. So,
and to be clear,
that's all I have to say.
There's a lot of people that think I'm full of shit and I made it up. Okay, whatever. I do have witnesses. I do have buddies, and we joke and call me tinfoil conspiracy theorist. And my buddy Mitch will go, "You are," but that is not one of the reasons why you are. He was
the way you tell the story. I didn't think for a second that it was false. It's just you're telling it as though you lived it. Now maybe you're an amazing liar. True. I don't know. We only just met.
No, I have another buddy that goes, "I've heard this story 15 times and it's never changed." He goes that because a guy argued. He goes, "No way, I don't believe it." My buddy Ryan goes, "Nah, it happened."
I wish it did. I'm glad Saeed didn't find social media at that time because he would have had a real field day with some of the advancements that we've made in that spectrum.
We would have just had to make a crypto coin with a dog on it or something.
You know what we had back then was MySpace.
You had to find a way to put Dogecoin in here. MySpace, yeah. Tom.
That was the only one that was around. Tom. Everyone remembers Tom.
I was everyone's first friend back in the day. Yeah. But where are they now?
I know, right? In the Middle East for 6 months, and
really,
I lived in Bahrain. It's crazy.
What was in the Navy?
You wouldn't think like how backwards, and it's not that it's backwards, and I don't mean it like that, but like technology has just not made its way there yet. Like so, when I was there, I think it was Xbox 360s. This was around that time. Were like the new hotness, right? Like everybody had one of those. Well, they were still on like 2 gens old, right? Like you could still find 8 tracks that were pretty common, like cassette tapes, VCRs, like all that stuff is there and still common. Like if you want like a DVD player or like an Xbox or something like that, it was expensive, very expensive, different power, all kinds of stuff. It's crazy like how lagged they are from getting like tech and other things from the
No. Have you ever visited Cuba, Will, by chance? No. Well, I didn't know if the Navy, just because I hear Cuba's a lot that way. Now that the embargoes are off, it's different, but like you could do almost a time capsule. You could go there and the cars that are there are just refixed and refixed and refixed like 50, 60-year models.
Oh yeah.
So there is no good way to transition back into the NFL. So I'm just gonna bull rush it. Well, let's just go back because
there are a lot of Cuban nationals in the NFL. So there you go.
There you go. There's the
I can't name one.
There's got to be one. They're there. Let's just assume. Okay, so let's just do it. Like I said, there's no easy segue here.
Sorry, I didn't mean to be so somber or down.
No, it's okay. I wanted to hear your story. It is a truly fascinating story, and I do think it was worth hearing. But after all, we're still a football podcast. Our palates are very well cleansed to where I'm going to have to work hard to get back into football spirit. But hey, we can do it here if anybody can do it, it's the Pigskin Party podcast. All right, so
I'm ready to Pigskin Party. Let's roll.
Let's go. Let's Pigskin Party. All right, so here's the main flavor of the week topic this week. So our writer Ross Crawford, who writes for us, puts up articles on our Patreon and our website as well. The article that he wrote this week is an NFL QB ranking, but not a talent ranking. That's a little too on the nose. No, he wrote a team quarterback stability ranking. What it was inspired by was there's been a lot of quarterback drama from very, very high-end quarterbacks that we haven't seen in the past. Obviously, the most recent one is Aaron Rodgers. He's the MVP. For all intents and purposes, he was the best quarterback in the NFL last year. But their situation in Green Bay is not stable at all. So that is what these rankings are based around. The talent plays into it to a degree, almost like a tiebreaker, but these rankings are all about the stability of all 32 teams at the most important position in sports, the quarterback. So what I want to do is I've got the list, I've got the article in front of me. We're going to go through the different tiers. I'll read the names, and the teams, of course. And then I'd love to hear from you guys on what your thoughts. Do you agree with where Ross put these teams? Do you have any particular comments on these teams? So we're going to start top to bottom. The first tier that he has is simple enough. It's called Super Bowl stability. So these are teams, they not only have a long-term starter in place, but it's a starter that is talented enough to take them to and possibly win a Super Bowl. So I'm going to read all 4 teams, and then feel free if any of you guys have any comments on any of the 4 teams, or if you think a team's missing along those lines. So, obviously, Kansas City Chiefs, quarterback Patrick Mahomes. Buffalo Bills, quarterback Josh Allen. Seattle Seahawks, quarterback Russell Wilson. And Baltimore Ravens with quarterback Lamar Jackson. Those are the 4 teams he has in the Super Bowl stability tier. Any thoughts?
I mean, I think it's that stable.
Well,
sorry, Tom.
I don't think so.
No, I mean, I was going to say maybe you could flip the Seahawks to 2, but he did have that vague trade request. Devil's advocate, I know Josh Allen was great last year, but are we that sure that he's going to be a stud for the next 10 years? That would be my only comment, but I mean, certainly if he's going to play like that, and their team's really good, I got no real concerns. But yeah, definitely, if you had to pick 4, there's no other 4 you would pick, in my opinion.
I was a Josh Allen. I was a Josh
Sorry,
Allen doubter. Oh, no worries. I was a Josh Allen doubter, but I got to say those doubts are gone now. Watching his growth in year 3, but the fact that he grew to year 2 and year 3, I don't see a reason that he can't sustain 10 years. Who knows? But just the next 5 to 6, I think there's a good chance that Buffalo is going to be right there.
Yeah, but like, isn't this a stability metric? Like, isn't that kind of what you're talking about? Because I mean,
it is, but the top tier has to include talent as well. That's why it's Super Bowl stability. Just having a quarterback like Andy Dalton was the quarterback of the Bengals for like 27 years. That's as stable as it gets, but they never had Super Bowl stability, so that's almost like tier 2. So this is not only the long-term quarterback. Go ahead, Rich.
I struggle with Lamar in this tier. I'm not sold on Lamar. I have a lot more faith in Josh Allen than I do Lamar.
Ravens got to be, though. The Ravens have to be sold on Lamar. They have no other choice.
Right, but I mean, if we're going to talk about talent being in this pool too, I'm not sure that Lamar's going to be their answer for them. Whether they want to pound a square peg into a round hole is on them, but I have some doubts. I have a lot more faith in Josh Allen than I do Lamar.
I mean, they didn't really let Lamar last year. You know, for whatever reason. Like, he had flashes of it, but he wasn't really, like, the same guy that he was.
But you know what the crazy part, and a lot of people don't realize this, the Ravens still led the NFL in point differential. Everybody thinks, Lamar had an off year, and yeah, he certainly around the time he had COVID, he had some issues, but they still had the best point differential in the entire NFL. Like, they were a really good offense. They also had an elite defense, but especially towards the end of the year, they were running it up on teams.
Yeah, and I think, Rich, you bring up a good point, though, because of the 4 in this group, Lamar has the most specific, unique style that it can't really be, flexible. Whereas you could probably put, certainly Mahomes, but Mahomes, Wilson, and Josh Allen to a lesser extent in really any situation, and they could thrive and they could be malleable. But with Lamar, there's only one way to go, and we've seen now 3 years in a row with them that if it doesn't work, they have no backup plan, really.
Well, they've built and literally crafted their offense around this guy. So if he doesn't work out, they're back to ground zero, step 1.
Yeah.
So this is a huge year for Lamar Jackson.
My concern on Lamar, and I know I'm in the minority on this, and I talk about this on Twitter and on our pod, I think the running quarterback is overstated. Cam is built like a linebacker, and he couldn't hold up to the wear and tear. RG3 didn't even make it 2 years with the wear and tear. I think you're going to see Kyler Murray run a lot less this upcoming year, because I think at the end of the year when he started getting popped, you can't, as an NFL franchise, you can't pay that kind of money for the guy that touches the ball so much to go out there and get put in harm's way. Like, that's just foolish. And I think to your point, that's why they didn't let Lamar be Lamar last year. I think they're trying to protect him a little bit. I mean, you can't have that guy out there. Look at Micah Parsons and the other cat from Penn State, Owa. Look at I understand pro days we take a grain of salt with the 40 times. But those are some big men running some very fast speeds.
I just don't think I'd want Lamar out in harm's way all the time. And what else are you going to do with him? To your point, Brian, you built the whole offense around him.
I will say this about Lamar's running style. Unlike all the other running quarterbacks, including Kyler Murray, he is so good at avoiding contact. Whether
That's
it's
fair.
just knowing when to go out of bounds or just make a little shifty move and go down when he needs to. A lot of people think, and generally you're 100% right, Cam is a great example because he would just run at guys because he had that size. And Josh Allen has a similar running style. So to Tom's point, long-term, that might end up cutting back on Josh's long-term success. But Lamar is just so good at avoiding contact. He's so slippery. So now, whether that means he's a Super Bowl quarterback is an entirely different discussion. But as far as his durability as a runner, because of his running style, because he's so uniquely elusive, that doesn't worry me as much. I agree with all you guys' sentiments. Russell Wilson is an interesting pick. I think for this year, he's re-signed. The Seahawks certainly could have Super Bowl aspirations. They beefed up the offensive line a little bit. We'll see if that helps. Defense is still a little bit of a question. But with Russell Wilson, they certainly could go that high. They've got a great receiving core, a set of weapons. Let's move on to the next tier. So this tier is entrenched as starters, and the ceiling is high. So 4 teams again for this one. We've got the Los Angeles Chargers and Justin Herbert, Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott, the Tennessee Titans and Ryan Tannehill, and the Cincinnati Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow.
So this was my biggest disagreement on the list, was Tennessee being 7th. I know Tannehill's had a real good couple of years, but he had 8 pretty mediocre ones before that with the Dolphins, and they just lost Arthur Smith, who everybody raves about as like the real mastermind. I mean, I don't really consider him a high ceiling guy. I think he's a low floor guy. He gives you a lot of like really great fundamentals, and he seems to know the plays very well. He makes the right plays, particularly off play action, but I don't view him as like a guy that I'm, totally sold on long term. I think, this will be an interesting year without Arthur Smith, but the other 3, I don't really have much else to say because those are pretty solid picks for this distinction, but I'm not really into the Tannehill hype personally.
As a Dolphins fan, there's one point I have to make here. I'm seeing so many players who played under Adam Gase go to different situations and thrive, or stay with the Dolphins and thrive the way Devontae Parker did. That at least has to be taken into effect. The bigger issue is what you said, is Arthur Smith leaving to coach the Atlanta Falcons, no longer being the offensive coordinator. He ran that offense so well, having Derrick Henry in the background. They lost Corey Davis. They lost Jonnu Smith. They've still got A.J. Brown, but the offense definitely lost some pieces. I agree with you. I'm not sure that – I think the last few years, the way the Titans have had success in the playoffs and everything, maybe he deserves to be on this list, but I think he is prime to be the first one to drop off as the season goes on. Rich, any thoughts on this? These 4?
I hear the concerns on Tannehill, and I'm a big Arthur Smith fan, so I agree with the points there. I actually think Herbert should be in the next class up, but I'm a big Herbert guy.
Super Bowl stability?
Where did we get the Joe Burrow tier from? I mean, was that last year enough to see that?
You're thinking he played, 9 games? He didn't quite show enough?
I mean, yeah. I mean, we're putting him in a pretty high class right now.
I would say if
I think college.
I mean, let's be honest. Let's look at Herbert's year last year and Burrow's year last year as a whole. Even before Burrow got hurt, Herbert looked better from the word go. He had a lot better pieces around him, better O-line around him. Don't get me wrong, but I mean,
and the Chargers actually had one of the worst offensive lines. People don't realize that, but Herbert made up for that. He did
not know that.
They did. As far as pressures, they didn't allow as many sacks because Herbert was better at avoiding sacks than Burrow was. But as far as pressure rates, the Chargers were up there with the Bengals. I think those might have been the top 2, or at least 2 of the top 3 worst offensive lines in the league last year.
Well, now I'm even more sold Herbert's a lot better.
I was going to say, that only proves your point even more. What I'll say on your point, Will, is let's go on to the next tier, because that will differentiate, because Burrow doesn't fit into this next tier. So as far as entrenched starters, which we agree Burrow is the entrenched starter in Cincinnati, there's no questions there, with a high ceiling. He may not have been as good as Herbert, but he certainly showed a lot of potential and a lot of flash, and I think he has a lot of room to grow, which means the ceiling is high. So I get your concerns, but I agree with the tier, and here's why. The third tier is contender stability for 2021, but decisions to be made. The first team on here, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Tom Brady. The second team,
They already made a decision.
They already made the decision. Kyle Trask?
Yeah.
Yeah, but is he the future?
Man. Oh man.
You
I'll
think
bet
so?
I'll bet $100 Trask is not the future.
I mean, what else? Just go on your list before we talk about that.
Okay, yeah, let's finish. There's only 3 teams in this tier. The second team, Cleveland Browns and Baker Mayfield. Some people might have put them in the tier above, but Ross has them in the decisions to be made. Curious, after leading Cleveland to their first playoff win in 25 years. And then Arizona Cardinals, Kyler Murray. Contender stability, but decisions to be made.
I'm sorry, Will, go for it.
Let's circle back, will we? What else are we going to do in Tampa when Tom Brady retires right now?
What do you mean, what else, like, besides Kyle Trask is what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, like, so you bring
But that
the guy
doesn't mean
in.
that's the decision that should be made. That doesn't mean he is 100% the next generation.
There's no decision around Tom Brady. You can agree there, right?
Well, not this year.
Well,
correct.
for sure.
Not any year.
He has to
There's
fall
no
off at
decision.
some point. He's still human. He might.
He's
be
not gonna.
TB12.
No, he's not. He's gonna fall off. He's gonna retire. He's gonna retire. If not, this is probably his last year. He may do. If he wins the Super Bowl, he may come back one more year. But I don't think he's got to fall off to retire. I think he's just gonna hit his age. He's gonna be like, nah, I'm good. He was always gonna play, till he was right around 45. I think he's, I'm not sure what the decision is in Tampa Bay. There's not a decision. And what are you going to do? What are you going to do if Tom Brady gives you 2 Super Bowls and he sucks ass his 3rd year? You're going to bench him?
He's earned it at that point. Yeah, you're right.
You're not going to
You're
bench him.
All right, so let's talk about the other 2 teams then. We've got 2 AFC North guys.
That. No, hang on.
Okay.
Kyle Trask is not the future. Why?
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 I don't like the way he throws the ball. Kyle Pitts and Tony made him look good. If you pull up a Kyle Trask highlight reel, what you see is a bunch of balls that Kyle Pitts changed from interceptions into touchdowns. He forces the ball in bad windows. He doesn't put the zip on it, and he does not have a low enough, laser enough ball, in my opinion, to make it the NFL. He is NFL backup material that is going to be a turnover machine.
Fair enough. No retort there, Will?
Just listen. He is the greatest thing since Tim Tebow to come to the University of Florida quarterback position. He had some, but Kyle Pitts was a freak of nature. He would have made anybody look amazing.
Right, but what I'm saying is the ball is literally going to be intercepted, and Pitts took it away. That's what I'm saying, is that if it wasn't for Pitts and Tony, the numbers, I don't think we're having the same conversation about Trask. He does not have that pop and step into the ball, man. I could be... Look, I'm not a quarterback guru, but we have this debate all the time. I'm a bit of a Trask hater. I have no doubt he's the greatest thing since Tim Tebow went to Florida. All right? I have no doubt on that. But Tim Tebow wasn't ever going to make it in the NFL as a quarterback.
And probably not as a tight end, too. Just putting that
Probably
out there.
not.
Trevor Lawrence needs to watch this.
I'll say this. I think he'll be better than Felipe Franks as far as former Florida quarterbacks.
Thank you.
Oh, that's
not
fair,
very
but,
much, but
but
yeah.
that's not saying a lot, man.
Did
I know.
Franks get drafted? Franks got drafted, right?
No, he was undrafted signed. He got
undrafted.
signed by
Yeah.
Atlanta as undrafted.
Yeah,
Oh, interesting.
I'm also a Mizzou
I know, I
fan,
thought so too.
I'm also a Mizzou football fan, so I've watched a lot of Florida Gators quarterbacks over the years. So, Will, I feel your pain on that. Trask was definitely the best of that group.
My license plate said quarterback MIA. It was a Florida license plate. I get it, man.
Okay, that's just
So let's-
awesome, Will. But I've got some about this tier in general. The Baker move, I guess maybe I feel like there should be another, to Will's point about Burrow, I think there should maybe be another tier because I don't think Baker is a decision. I got in an argument about I don't want Aaron Rodgers. I'd rather have Baker. That offense.
Well, let's be clear. Let's be clear about the title. So he does say contender stability for 2021. but decisions to be made. In other words, there's no question about that Baker Mayfield is the starter in 2021. But if he's shown in his second year, granted under Freddie Kitchens, and that the team was run horribly then, but he's shown that he needs things to kind of be set up a certain way in order to have success. And when they don't go his way, he can actually be a pretty bad quarterback. So I think that's what Ross is getting at here is, look, we're not questioning him for 2021. We're not questioning Tom for 2021. But if all of a sudden Tom Brady falls off a cliff, there's a decision to be made next year. If Baker Mayfield reverts back to how he was 2 seasons ago, there's a decision to be made in Cleveland. What I'm more curious about is Kyler Murray. If he has a bad year, is there an actual decision to be made in Arizona?
Not yet. I don't think so.
Yeah, I think the question is sort of twofold with, are people buying the Cardinals as, an actual contender? Last year they showed some flashes, but after the Hail Murray, they sort of fell apart, and you saw what happens when you pull Murray out of that situation, literally. I don't know. I still don't know if I think Cliff Kingsbury is a great or even good NFL coach. And he's going to need to get the most out of that guy, because for as much talent as he is, like, the size is going to be a constant issue. And, I think they made some kind of odd decisions with their offseason, particularly the J.J. Watt deal. I didn't really like that for them.
And A.J. Green?
A.J. Green, yeah, hey.
It's like the second retirement home in Arizona for all.
Why don't they just bring back Blaine Gabbert for the 2011 draft reunion? I mean, let's just get.
Isn't he in Tampa?
He is, and they re-signed him.
There's the decision you want to make.
There's the decision. Blaine Gabbert or Kyle Trask.
Hey, I tell you what,
Kyler Trask.
Isn't Gabbert got kind of a soft arm too?
Oh, maybe that's what they want.
Isn't that one of his knocks?
Yeah, they're just trying to keep.
He's got a lot of knocks, but he hasn't been a starter for a long time, so we really.
Let's not go on a Blaine Gabbert tangent because it's easy to do. So I'm with you, Tom. My question actually are not around Kyler Murray's talent. I always thought it was the right move for Arizona to pick him and go away from Josh Rosen a few seasons ago. But I am not sold on Kingsbury as a head coach in the NFL.
Nope.
I'm a little curious about some of the personnel decisions that they have made. Drafting a linebacker at 16 when there was still there was a defensive back that was still on the board who fell, Caleb Farley, and that was a clear need for them after losing Patrick Peterson and not having a great secondary even with Peterson there last year.
And they took a linebacker in the first round last year too.
Isaiah Simmons, yep, who wasn't horrible, but certainly was not worthy of the pick so far. So yeah, there have been some personnel decisions. Their defense hasn't been great. They didn't have great weapons around. Fitzgerald was getting old. Trading for Hopkins was if they didn't do that, they would have had absolutely no one to throw to. So there's a lot of questions with that team. I'm not sure Kyler Murray is the biggest problem there. Let's move on to the next tier. And this has quite a few teams in it. So the name of this tier has a point to prove, but expectations are high. So there's some interesting names in here. First, Matt Stafford for the LA Rams, Matt Ryan for the Atlanta Falcons, Derek Carr for the Las Vegas Raiders, Kirk Cousins for the Minnesota Vikings, Carson Wentz for the Indianapolis Colts, and Tua Tagovailoa for my Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, my first thought was, does Matt Ryan really have something to prove? He's been as stable as Wonder Bread for every year of his career. I would say the team is sort of in a transitional period.
I actually do, and here's why. They had the opportunity with it. Atlanta is never this high. They did have an option to draft a franchise quarterback at number 4, and they chose to go with Kyle Pitts, who's a stud, who's going to be freaking amazing.
Yeah.
But what Matt Ryan has to prove is that they made the right decision. He has to prove that the Atlanta organization, by committing to him for 2, 3, 4 more years, that was the right move. That's what he has to prove.
Counterpoint. Who would have they picked? Mac Jones? Justin Fields? I mean, maybe they just didn't feel like Fields was it,
A lot of teams seem to have felt that way, which is very curious.
And if you're drinking the Arthur Smith Kool-Aid, like it seems like a lot of us are, maybe that will, give them some new life. They do have plenty of great weapons. We don't know what's going to happen with Julio Jones. Aside from the Falcons one, though, everybody else on this list makes perfect sense. I think there's a lot to prove amongst the group, and I would say conservatively about half of these teams will probably have different quarterbacks next year anyway. So,
see, I disagree
I'm
with
in
the
agreement.
Stafford one. I think Stafford should probably be a tier, if not 2 tiers up. I don't think Stafford's going anywhere for the next 3 to 4 years, and I feel like he's done way more than prove himself. I guess he's on a new team, but they gave up a lot to ride him right now. So I feel like that's a pretty stable situation with Super Bowl expectations, really. You know, I could hear the argument of moving Baker down to this level because he is much like Cousins in that there's still something to prove to a degree. You know, I don't think Cousins is good. The Vikings have no desire to play Kellen Mond this year. If they have to play Kellen Mond this year, they're in a world of hurt.
I'm looking back at the tiers above, and I would not be against putting Stafford actually 2 tiers up and the entrenched as starter and the ceiling is high. I wouldn't
Agreed.
hate that move because of, first of all, there's no decisions to be made. They don't have any draft capital. The Rams
Right.
have put all in on Stafford. You've got McVay. You've got this great offense. You've got a ton of weapons. You've got a stellar defense. So, yeah, and I do think Stafford has proven to be, on some very bad Lions teams, a still pretty decent top 10, top 12 quarterback. You give him the surrounding cast he has now, I believe he's entrenched as a starter, and I do believe his ceiling is high. So, Rich, I will agree with you there. I think he could have put in that tier. Obviously, I have to comment on Tua. I can't argue with this. I think the expectations are high, and he does have a point to prove. He only started 9 games coming off a very severe hip injury. He didn't have any receivers or any weapons that really got a lot of separation. He did not have good protection from the offensive line, and he had the great Ryan Fitzpatrick, a.k.a. Fitzmagic, waiting right behind there, ready to come in and make some plays. But I think this is a huge year for Tua. I've said it many times. I still believe he has the potential to be great, but he doesn't have any excuses anymore. They signed Will Fuller. They drafted Jalen Waddle. They improved that offensive line. They made the defense even better, especially with the pass rush, signing Jalen Phillips. It's a make-or-break year for Tua, and luckily the Dolphins have draft capital, so they could make a decision at a new quarterback in 2022 if they needed to.
I'm curious, Brian and Will, what are your guys' opinion on Tua in general? Because I'm assuming Will has seen him. Okay, well, I'm with Will on this. Brian?
Well, what I just said, I think what I saw as a prospect in college, the ceiling is very high. I was very excited. I thought he compared a lot, in my opinion, to Drew Brees. He got all sorts of other comparisons, and not just because he's a lefty, but because of his accuracy, because of his twitchiness, because of the way he's able to quickly go through progressions and put the ball in tight spaces. And he's got a great arm, and he's not afraid to throw the deep ball, wasn't in college. The problem was that he was used to such amazing weapons. I mean, we're talking 4 first-rounders he was throwing to in Alabama with basically an NFL all-pro offensive line. And then he goes to a team with a bottom-half offensive line, didn't have much time to throw. Chan Gailey's offense had the kid gloves on him. They didn't want him taking chances. So what did he do? He wasn't throwing interceptions. He wasn't throwing interceptions, but he was being way too timid. If he didn't see it as open, and an NFL open is not Alabama open, he was holding the ball, and he was taking sacks. He was making smart decisions, but he was not taking the right chances. In this NFL, you have to take chances. So my judgment on Tua is there's way too little information. He was coming off a devastating injury. People were unsure if he would ever play again. He did not have a traditional offseason. He didn't have a chance to bulk back up. If you've seen some of the pictures that have come out recently, he looks so much stronger. He looks so much more bulkier. He's ready to play. He's got a full NFL offseason. He's got the weapons. You can't say he doesn't. He's not throwing to Allen Hurns and Jakeem Grant as his top receivers. And Gesicki was good, but Gesicki was injured. Devontae Parker isn't good as a number one by himself. Now you got Will Fuller and Jalen Waddle. You got speed. You've got talent. You got weapons all across the board. They upgraded the offensive line. Getting Liam Eichenberg in the second round, I think, was a great pick. So there's no more excuses. If he still shows the kind of timidness that he did for a full season, then I will be off the Tua train as a Dolphins fan.
Do you think Fuller hooked him up with a... I would say he kind of did talk me into it too, Tom. Do you think Fuller hooked him up with some steroids? You think that might have helped a little bit?
I won't complain if it makes him play better. I've been in football purgatory for 2 decades, so I'm ready for some Dolphin success. Okay, so let's go on. There is 1 tier left. I'm sorry, no, 2 tiers left. Wait, 3. Okay, let's go through these quickly because I know we're running over. So here's the next. This is a fun one, and I don't want to get into this one too much because we've broken it down on this podcast before. But this tier is your guess is as good as mine. Shrug, and that is the reigning NFL MVP, Aaron Rodgers. And I think what he means by that is we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, all reports that have come out have been very clear that Rodgers doesn't want to return, but he doesn't have a no-trade clause. It would cost him about $30 million even if he decided to retire.
38.
He's got the Jeopardy thing, but I don't think any of us know how this is going to play out. We can speculate all we want, but your guess is as good as mine.
As long as he doesn't go to Denver.
I'm up here.
That's the most likely spot.
I'm saying that's the best odds in Vegas right now, Will. I
know.
live up here in Packerland, and I'm telling you, nobody's got a clue.
I don't even think in that organization they have a clue. They want to keep him.
Nope.
They're trying to find ways. You've got players like John Kuhn and James Jones, a former receiver who played with Rodgers, going out and saying they think Rodgers will stay. These people he's talked to. He said there were reports that he won't play if GM Brian Gutekunst is back. There's all sorts of stuff going out there. It's fascinating, and we'll follow it all offseason, but we don't know how it's going to play out yet. Tom, any quick comments before we go to the next tier?
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers was great on Jeopardy. I think he's got a bright future in that. But,
and that's the leverage he's using. How crazy is that? That the reigning NFL MVP is using a Jeopardy hosting gig as leverage over the Green Bay Packers. What a world. What a time we live in, right?
Yeah.
I mean, am I crazy if I say that the way this whole thing has been handled and played out is as childish and junior highish as can possibly be?
Yeah, man, I think it's sort of a nuanced conversation on both ends. I see where he's coming from. I also see where the Packers are coming from. I don't know who's been leaking from each side of it, but, I think ultimately what's going to most likely play out is nothing is going to happen until the very last minute that they have to make a decision. And I think there's some people that think that he wants to make it work in Green Bay for one more year. But, yeah, I mean, this is a perfectly described tier because nobody here knows, and I don't think anybody else really knows other than the Packers and him.
So, Ross, if you're listening, kudos to you for naming the tier. Good job.
No, here's the thing. The best part of this is that Drew Brees realized that he wasn't going to catch Tom. Aaron Rodgers is realizing that he's never going to catch Tom. So you might as well just kind of do what you're going to do and go somewhere else and just give up.
And just give up? Or no, if he goes you go to catch him, no, but he'd like a second Super Bowl. He only got one. So going to a place like Denver with all those weapons and that solid defense, I mean, they're an instant AFC title contender if he goes to Denver.
I got a question.
Let's keep moving.
Okay.
All right, ask quickly. Ask quickly. And then we're coming up in an hour. We got like 4 tiers left.
That guy doesn't even get along with his family. I don't know who he's going to get along with.
He had a falling out. Yeah, he had a falling out with his family a while ago. So, who knows what Aaron Rodgers does, what Aaron Rodgers does. Maybe Shailene Woodley is the only one besides him. Who knows what he's going to do.
He probably does her.
But that's okay.
Good
we can
point.
agree on that.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah, touche. Good for him. All right, the next 2 tiers are really around the rookie quarterback, so I'm just going to list them. There's not really anything for us to know yet. This is pretty straightforward. So one tier is called the rookies expected to start day 1, Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville and Zach Wilson in New York Jets. I think we can all agree that they're starting. There's no real questions around that.
No, Tim might take that job.
I'm not even going to respond to that. We're just going to keep going. Okay.
What would be the odds on let's say that he makes the roster. He's a quarterback on the roster, right? What are the odds he throws he's a tight end, but he's on the roster. What are the odds he throws a touchdown pass next season as a tight end on the
high.
roster?
They'll definitely do some sort of trick play where he does his little jump, little freaking thing he did in the national championship game.
Vegas, I guess, would probably have. I bet you there's a prop bet on Vegas for probably plus 500, plus 750.
If I was pulled up close to my dining room table and I saw Tim Tebow as a tight end throw a touchdown pass, you would hear a very firm, solid knock on my dining room table. from underneath.
I am worried about what our podcast will be like the week after.
12
that
inches?
happens. I dread it. 12,
12
TB12. TB12. Okay, let's keep it rolling. So, three more rookie situations, but they're not necessarily starting week one. And he calls this tier long-term plan in place. Very straightforward. Trey Lance for Jimmy Garoppolo in San Francisco, Justin Fields, and Andy Dalton, a.k.a. QB1 in Chicago.
I don't think that's a long-term plan, buddy.
That's a
I think
pretty good
about
plan.
6
I
games
think
before Dalton gets benched.
I think it's of these three, and the third one is New England Patriots with Mac Jones and Cam Newton. That the Bears could be the team where Fields is starting week one. I think he could show off at camp.
I think
and
Mac
Dalton,
Jones is going to get. I think a lot of those kids are going to.
Jones won't start week one though. Jones could start.
No.
Cam will start week one, but I'm saying Justin Fields of these is the one I could see just having a great camp, and it's not hard to beat Andy Dalton. And then you see Justin Fields starting week one. We will see. Okay, the next tier.
Rocket.
So, question marks. You'll notice that a certain team out of Pittsburgh has not been listed yet. They are in this next tier. Question marks for 2021 and the 2022 starter might not be on the roster. So, the first team on that list is the Pittsburgh Steelers with Ben Roethlisberger, Detroit Lions with Jared Goff, New Orleans Saints with both Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill, Philadelphia Eagles with Jalen Hurts, New York Giants with Daniel Jones, Danny Dimes. This one is interesting. Carolina Panthers with Sam Darnold. I mean, I guess technically we don't know how he's going to do yet. I'd like to think he's going to succeed in Carolina, but I can understand 2022 starter might not be on the roster. Although they did pick up Darnold's fifth year option. But that doesn't mean he's going to start. If he does bad this year, he might still be benched next year. Denver Broncos, Drew Lock from Mizzou, Tom. And then the Washington football team with Taylor Heineke / Ryan Fitzpatrick. Any quick takes on any of those teams?
Well, I'll just come out and say it. The Steelers are appropriately ranked. They certainly don't have a plan beyond this year. Oddly enough, I think most people would probably take Roethlisberger in a one-game setting out of most of the guys on this list, which is kind of damning for some of the younger fellows here, but you know, it's appropriate ranking. I certainly don't think that their 2022 starter is on the roster if you exclude Roethlisberger from that conversation. And, you know, I think you can make a case the Broncos have the worst quarterback situation in football. So no real complaints there. And just a real tough look for the NFC least overall. 3 teams in the group.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at this list and try to find a name I can make a case for, but I can't. Yeah, I don't have enough faith in any of these guys that the 2022 starter might not be on these rosters.
No, but
all right,
I think
let's move
Darnold should be in the group where it's set for the year with high expectations, or not high expectations, but something to prove, because he's their starter for the year. He's their starter for the year. There's no getting around it.
I could see that. He's the only one on this list I'm like, okay, I could see him having a great year, or at least having a much improved year of what he did in New York and sowing a long-term future. Okay, there is now only one tier left.
Wait, so if Darnold has a great year in Carolina, I mean, Adam Gase is done, right? Like,
no.
He's never
I'd like to think he's done already.
Is he not done yet? I mean,
nice. I know, right? He's had 2 head coaching jobs that he's completely flunked.
Yeah.
Screwed.
He's done.
Yeah, I don't want to spend any more time on Adam Gase. All right, one tier left. There is only one team on this list, and is probably one of the most obvious besides like the top tier, where it was like Mahomes and Josh Allen, and that is in utter turmoil. No franchise is in worse shape across the board than the Houston Texans. Obviously, even before the allegations, with everything that was going on with Deshaun wanting out, they were already in turmoil. Then the sexual assault allegations come across Deshaun, which just takes it to the next level. They have signed Tyrod Taylor and drafted Davis Mills with their first pick, which was in the 3rd round, because thanks to
Hopkins,
Bill O'Brien trading Laramie Tunsil and giving us a number of picks in the 1st and 2nd round, that's where Houston was end up. So what's there to say that hasn't been said about this situation? Houston is just an absolute train wreck. And as Will likes to say, doo-doo, I'm going to say super doo-doo. Tom, Rich, quickly, anything we haven't heard before with this?
I'm not touching. I'm not touching anything with Watson with a 30-foot pole.
All right, Rich has passed. Tom.
No, I guess the only mild intrigue I have is Is he going to be on the exempt list this year? Will he play at all? I personally don't think that he will. He's definitely not going to be on the team after this season. That's the only thing I'll put my name to, but I have no idea what's going to happen.
I would say
hope
the only
Davis
intrigue
Mills
I have
does
here.
okay, though. Sorry.
That's what I was going to say. No, I agree with you. The only intrigue I have is I actually like Davis Mills as a prospect. I think had he had more time to play, more games, I think he only played like 11, he would have been getting a lot more hype. So they might have, obviously he needs a ton of development, having so little college experience, but he really fits the bill as a prototype passer with mobility, great touch and accuracy, has shown the ability to read progression, still make some mistakes, but he's only started 11 games. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. Of course, he's in an absolutely dreadful situation, so even if he's got the right skill set, it could crash and burn. All right, so we are over an hour, which is rare for a flavor of the week, but that's Rich's story alone, I think, took about half an hour, and it was 100% worth it. Before we get going, guys, I'd love to hear quickly about each of your podcasts. Tom, tell us about your podcast.
Yeah, so I host a podcast called Friday Night Beers alongside my friend Vince Locke, who's a great, funny guy. It's a show where we review beers with sports and pop culture analogies instead of snobby beer talk. So we talk about IPAs, wheat beers, and we talk about Inception equally as well, or Mean Girls, whatever your flavor is. Episodes are only 20 minutes long. You can follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. And we also have an Instagram at friday.night.beers. Check it out. It's a good show.
Yeah, make sure to check out Tom on Friday Night Beers. And Rich, tell us about the ATB Fantasy Show.
So the ATB Fantasy Show is kind of like what it sounds like. We talk about fantasy for the most part. I co-host it with, you can find him on Twitter, Paul Ryan and CD Piglet. And CD Piglet, Mike Crum, he's been doing some writing for the Cowboys. So we're lucky to have him on there. He's had some great insight with some scouting reports. And sometimes he and I get talking too much X's and O's, but it's pretty much all football with maybe some inappropriate jokes here and there because I don't know how to keep my mouth shut.
We know what that's like on this show. Well, thank you guys, Tom, Rich,
TB12.
for coming on. TB12. That'll be the theme of this episode. Thank you so much for listening. As always, please make sure to subscribe, tell your friends, leave us a 5-star review. Check us out on Twitter at official PP Pod. You can watch this show and all of our shows on YouTube. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Check out our Discord community if you want to interact with us. Leave some comments, leave some suggestions for palate cleansers that'll hopefully be happier than the Al-Qaeda recruitment story that we just heard. Link in the episode description. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next week on the PPP.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Pigskin Party Podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate that effort. We'll catch you in the next Pigskin Party.